Hi, my name is Leke Opaleye. I'm 19. I grew up in the UK to two Nigerian parents. I attended a primary school in the UK called Edgrove and a secondary school called Eton College. Life in the UK is definitely different to Nigerian life, I can say. It's a lot colder, firstly, which I'm not a big fan of. But also, I'd say in the UK, there's a sort of lack of culture where Nigeria excels in that department. I've definitely been able to, feel the culture and feel the sense of community in Nigeria more than in the UK. I feel like in the UK it's quite individualistic. People kind of stick to themselves, but in Nigeria I've been able to see, tons of people, integrating together and communicating and just sharing culture, sharing just sharing tons of different ideas in terms of traditions, which I think is quite interesting, which I've liked. Well, I think I've always had a sort of latent interest in Nigeria and Africa, being the child of two Nigerian parents, and something that seemed to shock a lot of people in Nigeria is that I had a very Nigerian upbringing. Despite not growing up in Nigeria, Yoruba was my first language before I had to speak English to study in the UK. But I eat Yoruba meals, I can understand Yoruba. I can't really speak anymore, unfortunately. But a lot of my life, a lot of the conversations I have with my parents are in Yoruba. So I think I've been able to integrate into Nigerian life a lot easier than a lot of other people because of my upbringing and because of the way my parents raised me, which I'm really grateful for. But I think another thing, as I mentioned, another thing that interested me was the culture and the different cultures through the country, which I feel the UK lacks. I don't think the UK really has a solid identity. Well, I wouldn't say the UK. The UK is made up of so many different cultures, so many different countries. I mean, obviously due to its colonization. For example, people would say a British, like a standard British meal is like a Chinese takeaway, which doesn't really make sense. But I like that in Nigeria it has its own traditions, its cultures, its identities, its food. Like Nigerian, don't even get me started on Nigerian food. I could go on all day about Nigerian food. That's been definitely one of my favorite things about coming to Nigeria. Just the tons of different foods I've had. Before Semicolon, I have never had an interest in tech. I studied computer science at GCSE, but that was more mandatory as opposed to something I was really interested in. But in the UK, my first inkling of tech, or my first interest of tech, was when my mom spoke to me about Mr. Emmanuel. And then when she introduced me to him, or she put me in contact with him, and we scheduled a meeting a few days later. So I had a short conversation with him, maybe half an hour, and he explained what you guys do here at Semicolon. He explained how that works, but he also explained it's not only just a tech company that just teaches people how to code, but I mean, from the stuff I've already done, industrial design thinking, critical thinking, teaching people how to, become better people for the future, how to become employable, but also how to become employers, which is something that definitely piqued my interest when I was speaking to him. Coming to Semicolon, I didn't really know what to expect because, as I said, I've never coded before, and I didn't really know how I would adjust to a new environment, new people, and also a new topic that I've never really thought about. But I can say that I've really enjoyed myself. I think I've been quite successful with my code. I think I'm getting a good grip of what we're studying, and I've also really enjoyed myself in Semicolon's environment. I think it's a lot different to a UK teaching environment, but in a way that's quite welcoming. Actually, it's quite keeps on your toes. The UK, a problem I had with UK learning, actually, sometimes it can be quite unengaging. I'm quite bored sometimes, especially in some classes where it's meant to be a teacher, but he's more just so a professor. He's just speaking out, not really asking questions. He's more just droning on, just giving information. So you're just kind of sat there, just writing down notes, not really engaged. But being taught by, Mr. Chi, Jennifer, Mr. Alfred, I can sense there's a lot more interest in what they're teaching us as well, in the sense that jokes are flying around, people are laughing in the classroom, which isn't really commonplace in the UK. The classroom is where you're meant to learn. If you're laughing or you're not quiet and writing, there's an issue, which I feel like is just it takes away from the experience of learning. That's why I feel like that's why a lot of people may struggle with learning, is because it's not interactive. It's not something that engages them, so they quickly become bored, and then in order to find something that excites them, they may look away from learning, may go to other things that might not be great or might not be appropriate. But that's something I've definitely enjoyed about Nigeria. I actually enjoy learning for the first time. Yeah, there's also a community within the village which is very much alive. I like the fact that people from different cohorts, interact with each other on a day-to-day basis. It's not, segregated, where cohort 23 speaks to cohort 23. I like the fact that if I walk outside and I see someone from cohort 22 or 24, I can speak to them, have a conversation, ask them for help even, or give help, which I think is a good way to foster a community and foster camaraderie between different cohorts. I also really like the fact that Semicolon isn't, cohorts aren't determined on age or expertise or something. It's just a group of people that are willing to learn something. And I think that also really helps in, making a community that's interactive but also welcoming, in the sense that even if I'm a bit younger, I know I'm still welcome, and I know that there could be someone older than me that can still ask me for help, which has happened on multiple times. And I think it's a good thing, because it's good for reinforcing what we learn in Semicolon, but also good for meeting new people. I didn't really know anyone in Nigeria before arriving in Nigeria in September, but I can say I've made a lot of new friends. I've had a lot of great experiences that I'm actually going to be very sad to say goodbye to tomorrow. But yeah, I'd say the experience has been really great. On top of the teaching and the community aspects, I'd say just the people that I'm around, they've had a very positive effect on my life and my outlook towards tech, but also just how to interact with people. I'd say that I've really enjoyed being with a brand new group of people, and especially have enjoyed being with people that grew up in Nigeria, so that they can teach me the various cultures from different states, different traditions. Like the other day, actually, I learned that there's a state where men and women don't speak the same language. I'm guessing you guys might not have known that, but yeah, just stuff like that, just interesting things that people tell me, stuff that I didn't know, and also stuff that you can never see in the UK. Really, that's been probably the best things of my experience in Semicolon. I'd say the support I've received has been from tons of different parties, let's call them. So I've received support from the Semicolon community. Obviously, I received support from my own family, and where I'm staying with my mom's family and his own family and their kids and his wife, which have been very helpful. I've received support actually from a lot of my friends abroad who have just been checking on me quite frequently, just to ask how I'm doing, how's Nigeria, do I have any fun stories to tell, stuff like that. So it's kept me motivated to keep going, motivated to keep learning, because I know that a lot of people are trying to help me and trying to see me through to the end of this. Now, specifically on Semicolon support, I'd say that I've received a lot of support, but not so much as to the point I was being coddled, which I really appreciated. I like that they let me experience Nigeria by myself. They didn't try to force me down one road or another road. They let me experience tons of different things about Nigeria. I experienced food, I experienced dance, I experienced music, which has all been, really enjoyable for me. And I think I've really coming away from this, having gained. And then in terms of facilitators as well, facilitators have actually been quite a big help in my support, in the way that, I've been able to sense that they haven't gone easy on me, in the sense I haven't, made things easier for me, but more difficult for other students. But more, they've been able to, guide me. I mean, a lot of students didn't know tech, but didn't know tech, and also didn't really know the culture. I didn't really know how things operate in Nigeria, seeing I've never lived here. So they were quite helpful in, just helping me get along. And it wasn't in big things, it was like small things. For example, my understanding of pidgin is poor. So them being able to, explain, something that they'll say in pidgin, or explain a joke or something like that, it just keeps me engaged. I don't feel like left out from things because, there's a language barrier, which I think has actually been a very, very big help, especially in the building where a lot of pidgin is spoken. My pidgin is of course improving, but there's still a lot of things that I don't understand. So for, both classmates and facilitators, to either speak in, English, so everyone can understand, or to explain things to me, I feel quite supported. We were having this conversation when we arrived, actually. Adaptability. I'm proud of how well I've adapted to a whole new environment, whole new nation that I've never been not aware of, but I haven't known. Like, I've never lived in Nigeria. So the fact that I've been able to adapt, and people have told me as well, I remember this conversation I had with Jennifer, and she asked if I've ever lived in Nigeria. I said no, and she seemed shocked by the answer by the fact that I was able to get along with so many people. I was able to relate to a lot of things that they wouldn't expect someone from abroad to understand, or to have seen before. So I was able to relate to those things, and it's definitely helped me in my time here, because I'm able to just give a quick response to something, maybe get a laugh out of people, just become more welcoming and become more of a friend to people, as opposed to just someone that's leaving after some time. He has to go back. But I'd say I've made real relationships with the people I've met here, and that's probably what I'm most proud of: meeting new people, adapting to the new culture and environment, and making the most of my time. Am I going to miss Nigeria? The last like 2 weeks, the reality has been setting in that I'm actually going to leave tomorrow. Like, tomorrow is my last day, and as the clock ticks down, I've felt myself actually becoming quite sad that I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm sad to say bye to my classmates. I'm sad to say bye to the facilitators that have helped me up to this point. Sad to say goodbye to the family I've stayed with and everything they've helped me with through my time. 6 months letting another person stay in a house is not easy, so I'm very grateful to them as well. But I'm just going to be so sad to say goodbye to the culture, say goodbye to warm weather. Firstly, say goodbye to people dancing on the road, people, like, activity everywhere. I'm going to be sorry to see, like, walking to Semicolon and smelling, food on the road, smelling different sort of things that I normally eat which I normally eat as my breakfast, different meals, just something that I don't experience in the UK. You don't have, street vendors, and I feel like that's quite a big part of, Nigerian, like the society, in a sense. Like, there's a large informal sector, and I quite like its existence, in the sense that it's quite a casual way to go about getting certain things. I can just quickly stop by a shop, get something to grab, get something to eat for myself, and I won't be hungry for the rest of the day, which is something that's you don't really have in the UK. I don't really. It's not that you don't have it's not that you don't have, I can't grab something to eat, but it's more how so I do so. I go coffee shop or something like that. I don't get rice and stew. I don't get bread and akara. I can't get those things in the UK just like that. Which is definitely why I'm going to miss that a lot as well. I'm going to miss food, but I think that's a given. If I was to speak to, just a random person about Semicolon and how it could, affect them, I'd say that first things first, I've been quite fortunate because I'd say I'm quite an open-minded person. I like new experiences. I like throwing myself into, unfamiliar waters. And I'd say that's something you definitely want to maintain, or something you want to develop. Because if I hadn't had an open mind, I don't even think Semicolon is something that I could have experienced. I mean, a gap year already, before even coming to Semicolon, a gap year, the idea of a gap year frightened me. Taking a year out of school while my peers are already in university, advancing their education. I'm taking a year out, and I wasn't sure how I was going to fare during a gap year. I didn't know if it was going to be a useful 6 months, or if I'd just be wasting my time, or useful 1 year if I'd just be wasting my time. But 6 months in, I mean, the benefit from my gap year has exceeded any expectations I've had. So I'd definitely say, keep an open mind. Don't be afraid of change. I read a good book on change recently, and it's just a short novel on how to adapt to change so that you're constantly, or you're on top, as opposed to always chasing something new or chasing what used to be. Because change is, the saying is quite cliche, but change is constant. So you should be prepared for imminent change, and be prepared to react to that change. I'd also say Semicolon is definitely not something you're going to find yourself bored with. You don't even have time to be bored, to be honest. With the amount of work I'm doing, I wouldn't. If you're bored, you're not going to survive. But I've never been bored with the work I'm doing. I actually find it quite exciting, coding different programs, thinking about implementing different things into programs, different behaviors, different, just coding concepts. And, learning those things has been quite interesting. I've always had an interest in education. I just feel as though my education didn't excite me, or didn't have me, yearning more. I was more so in education waiting for it to end. But in Semicolon, as it comes to a close, I'm very sad. As it comes to a close, I wish I could stay another 6 months, but unfortunately that's not the case. But no, Semicolon is an exciting place. I've never been, it's never a dull moment in Semicolon. I took a gap year because, towards the end of my time in schooling, I was beginning to, realize that I didn't really want to study economics. Economics was, something that I'd set my mind on when I was young, because, that's where the money is, investment banking, finance, stuff like that. Then as I grew up, I realized with that comes a work environment that I don't think I'm really comfortable with. Something that's not how I want to be. That's not how I want my future to look like. Working like 19 hours, sleeping in the office, something like that. I didn't want it to look like that. But also the work, it wasn't something that really excited me. I wasn't making something. I think I'm quite a creative person, but not in the sense of arts and crafts, but through, like, I did acting, but also through like creating something, maybe not tangible, but just creating something that can be used. And there's a whole world of possibilities with coding, with software engineering. So that's probably one of the reasons I took a gap year. I wasn't really sure on what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to commit to a 4-year course and then find out I didn't really enjoy it, or commit to a university and then drop out, and then my whole my whole plan goes awry or something. I wanted to make sure that I have something, or maybe I'll go on a gap here. Maybe I'd realize, yeah, I don't want to do economics, or no, it's time for me to change. I want to do this, I want to do that. But just having a set idea of what I wanted to do. And Semicolon has really given me quite a plan for the next few years of my life, something that I lacked, a couple months ago or a few months ago. What's next for me? That's a good question. Okay, so my situation was quite interesting because I originally applied for economics, but I was always planning on taking a year out to, explore, go to Nigeria. I knew I was always coming to Nigeria. I didn't know I was always going to be doing Semicolon, but for a while now, I wanted to come to Nigeria. And coming to Nigeria, towards the end of, my schooling, I was starting to realize that economics might not be the thing for me. Like, while I enjoyed it in school, the courses that I'm seeing, they don't really excite me like that. But coming to Nigeria and doing some, software engineering, doing some coding, but also not only just coding, but learning how to think, learning how to, apply myself to certain problems in ways that I hadn't thought of before. It's definitely changed my course. So now I'm reapplying to different universities on a different course. I'm doing a software engineering course or computer science course because I feel like that's definitely where I see myself going in the future, specifically through two branches, either cybersecurity, because I happen to do a course on cybersecurity in the UK, which was quite interesting, like financial cybersecurity, and then also game development. That's something that I really, something I've been passionate about since young. I've really enjoyed games, and my mom has noticed, my family noticed that I had a real passion for games, but at that age I didn't really know what to do with it. I mean, I didn't want to become someone that plays for a living or something like that, but I've always had an interest in games, and specifically gamification, so making processes more game-like in order to get people engaged or get people encouraged to do those things. That's something I'm also quite interested in, and I think that's probably where I'll see myself going in the future, following my course. So yeah, that's me in the next 3-4 years. Yo, my name is Leke. People call me Opaski. I'm part of Core 23, aka Dynamites, and this is Semicolon. Peace.